on.
Krystal, my friend, how are you on this fine evening?
Good. I'm good. I am feeling great after yoga. Long day. How about you?
I too am feeling great after yoga. Thank you for a wonderful class as always.
You're welcome. It was lovely to have you.
I remember very early on when you started teaching at the studio, which I don't know if that was a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago. I can't remember anymore.
Probably just over a year.
But I remember it was either the first or the second time that you had been there. I don't know if I said it to you right away, but I definitely thought it. I said, this woman is an old soul.
You did say that.
Young woman, old soul. Because I've been doing some form of yoga for, I don't know, 10, 15 years, a while, we could say.
Yeah, that's a long time.
And so, in that kind of time, you have a lot of different instructors and a lot of different styles. And it was something about your practice that struck me as particularly spiritual, which there's very little of that in what I'll call modern yoga.
I agree.
And for you to have pulled that out at such an early age in a hot power environment, right? It's also not the most, not to say that it's not a spiritual environment, because obviously it is, but like of all the possible yoga environments, like it's intense compared to some of the others, right?
Yeah.
So for you to have woven that in early, I thought was pretty special. It was one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here, because I'm interested to learn a little bit more about you and your background and what got you into yoga in the first place. And I'd love to unpack that Bali trip and what you learned there.
Oh my God.
And some of those adventures. So maybe for folks listening, maybe just a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from, what got you into yoga, and maybe we'll start there.
Cool, sure. So my name's Krystal Maldonis. Let's see, I'm 26 years old. Originally from Massachusetts, Westminster area, so Central Mass. But I only lived there till I was 8. And then with my family, my 2 sisters and my parents, we moved to Maine. So we lived in Maine for another 8 years in Kennebunkport.
What part of Maine?
Kennebunkport. Yeah,
Oh,
so
nice.
right on the coast, right southern Maine. I did school there, middle school, high school, and then when I was going into my junior year of high school, we moved to South Carolina. So
Lots of surprises. Okay.
I've been around. So my aunt and uncle lived in South Carolina, so my parents wanted to move down there, and we did. So I finished high school and started college. So I went to USC, so University of South Carolina, but not the main campus, one of the sort of smaller campuses. A lot of people get surprised when I tell them that I basically flunked out of college. I was bad.
What were you majoring in?
I started with a major in art. So I love art. I don't really do much art anymore, but I'm very creative. So I was a painter. So I went to school for painting, and I figured that I couldn't really have a career, or at the time I thought I couldn't have a career that I'm sure I could have figured something out. But so that didn't work, and I ended up just partying like a classic college student and flunked out, which I think was for the better now that I look back. Then I went to nutrition school for a little while online, and that's what kind of sort of led me towards yoga, because I really fell in love with health and wellness. In the past, I guess I always felt like I was really spiritual, but it wasn't really an open topic in my family. Like, they're not really spiritual, and I feel like I'm kind of like the black sheep in that way. Sorry, I'll shut that off. Sorry. But anyway, yeah, so it was never really like an open topic. And then when I entered into this nutrition school, it was called Institute for Integrative Nutrition. So it was very holistic, and they talked a lot about spirituality. And then I just became very
I mean,
interested
that
in
was
it.
at USC or was that online?
I'm sorry, what?
Was that at USC or was that an online course?
No, it was an online school. So it's a school, yeah, that's out there, and it's just a year-long program that is online. And yeah, you just dive down deep into all nutrition aspects, but then lifestyle as well, and spirituality is a big part of it. And then that led me to trying yoga. This is kind of a long pathway to yoga, but eventually I found my way there. I tried a couple classes, and it just felt right, kind of. And this was in South Carolina. And then I decided randomly to move back to Massachusetts maybe 5 years ago. And the first thing I did was look for a yoga studio, and it was Hot Power Yoga, which is nice. Where I teach now.
And does your family live in Massachusetts now, or did they stay behind?
Oh, they're here. They actually moved back here first to take care of my grandparents. And I followed them shortly after, which interestingly, when I first moved back, I regretted it the first moment that I stepped out of the car. Like, I was so mad at myself that I did it. And it was really rough for a couple of years. I hated it. I had a really bad relationship with my mom. We didn't get along at all, which was very unlike us. But I think because I had sort of discovered that I was kind of different from my family. But then
your mom is also an artist, right?
She's a photographer. Yes. So I definitely get all my creativity from her. And yeah, eventually it all got better, and I can thank yoga for that. So I practiced religiously. I took Kristen's training at Hot Power, and then became a teacher.
So what do you think was the turning point where you went from I am enjoying this as exercise to this is a practice that can change my life to I want to change other people's lives?
That's a really good question. I think that is the coolest thing that happens with yoga. Is I do think that most people get into it from for the physical practice. It's a great physical workout. It's relaxing, obviously, but then there is sort of this turning point at some point where you're like, wow, this is deep, like life-changing. And that definitely happened for me. It was at probably one of the lowest points in my life when I was struggling with an eating disorder. This was after, so I just went into teacher training just because I had just moved here and I didn't really know anyone and I loved yoga. So I just did that. And then during training, I kind of discovered that I had this really bad eating disorder, which comes from, I have OCD, so I'm such a perfectionist. That led to an eating disorder, blah, blah, blah. But I ended up getting help. So I went to Walden Behavioral Care in Worcester, and the best coping mechanism for all of this change that was happening in my life was yoga. So that's where I really turned to yoga, and I found that it helped me so much on a mental level. It helped me get better. It helped me stay really connected to myself. And that was definitely like the biggest turning point. And I was like, wow, I love this. Like, it is the most amazing thing in the world. And I just felt extremely dedicated to it. So there was definitely that big shift. It's crazy when that happens, and you can see it happen for other people too, which is really cool, but I love it.
I didn't know you before I had sort of fallen into that zone, but the first, let's call it decade that I did yoga, I was doing it as a way to be more mobile for jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts.
Oh, wow.
So it was strictly for athletic performance and or relaxation, but primarily for athletic performance.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think you mentioned that you watched the first episode of this podcast, and I sort of described kind of the awakening that I sort of went through. And yoga after that was radically different.
Isn't that so
radically
cool?
Different? So cool. And now for me, I look at it as the physical practice, one of the 8 limbs, is like squeezing a rag or wringing out a rag. And inside of that rag are these little capsules of stored energy, mostly negative energy. And throughout the class, we sort of break them up. And if you allow yourself to be vulnerable enough, you can actually let go of a lot of it during class, whether that's somatically, whether that's meaning like tremors or sighs, yawns, through the deep Ujjayi breath, which is really, you could also do it with humming, though I think that would probably be weird for a lot of people in class. But it's quite effective and powerful. Anything, because the stuff that's trapped is energy, and all energy is some type of a vibration.
Exactly.
And so whatever you can do to vibrate that stuff out, I think is super powerful. And what I've also found is that if I'm feeling particularly safe, samadhi, shavasana, as if I'm going to.
Yes, samadhi would be lovely.
that would be pretty radical. That'd be a hell of a class. And for anybody who doesn't know what that means, it's basically once you've let go of all tension and you merge with the universe.
Yeah.
Deep into your third eye. And that's highly improbable that's going to happen in a group yoga class, but you never know. But in shavasana, this idea of being in a corpse pose, it's like, if you just lay still enough, all that stuff that you've broken open will almost like flow out of you because it's desperately trying to get out. It doesn't want to be there.
Exactly.
That's, I think, one of the really interesting things about this human conundrum that we're in is we do it to ourselves. All of the things that you hold on to, all of the pain, all of the suffering, all the bitterness, if you let go, it would all evaporate out of you instantaneously. Yeah. It's there because you're holding it there, because there's a piece of you inside that thinks you're safer if you do so. Yeah. Anyway, this is a lot of rambling.
It's so simple though, right? It's like, it's so simple, but we complicate it. And
we radically overcomplicate it.
It's crazy.
And we don't do ourselves any favors in this culture by focusing so much on the physical body, the gross body, that we don't pay attention to the astral body at all, right? Like, we don't believe in chakras or Kundalini energy or any of this stuff that has been demonstrated to be real for thousands of years. And I can say firsthand, from having both practiced it and read for the last couple of years, the amount of stuff that I've read, the podcasts I've listened to, the individual experience that I've had, whether it's during yoga, during sensory deprivation floats, during mystical journeys, my own seances, whatever. This shit is real. And we ignore it to our own peril. We're constantly trying to solve problems with pills and these Western ideals of just get tougher, get harder, ignore it, push it down. Anyway, it is fascinating. It's fascinating how simple healing is. Yeah. But it's the opposite of easy, right? Simple does not mean easy.
Exactly. It's far from easy. And it really is so crazy that people need to see something to believe it. But it's the believing that gets you there. If you believe that all of this is real, you'll get there.
If you believe in magic.
Yeah. You just have to
and
believe
honestly, it's so fucking true. Yeah. If you believe it's real, it is.
It is.
If you don't, you're never going to be able to touch it. You'll have no ability to experience it because your mind is the most powerful, or I should say your consciousness is the most powerful thing in the universe. There's a non-trivial chance that it creates the universe, that the universe is sprung from our consciousness.
We are the universe.
So if that's true, and if your consciousness is telling the program that is the universe, all this stuff doesn't exist, then it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
And you'll have no access to it.
Yeah. People are too wrapped up in the physical world, and they think that's the only world, like you said. But there are so many other dimensions that you can access if you try. And I think...
So you mentioned that your family's not terribly spiritual.
Yes.
And that you sort of went off on your own sort of journey. When did you start getting into spiritual, quote unquote, stuff? Was it after college? Was it when you were a kid?
I want to give you like most real answer here. I feel like it's kind of complicated. Like when I think this is maybe true for a lot of people, that when you're younger, you kind of like know, you almost like can like feel that you're spiritual.
Yeah, you can intuit it.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you kind of just feel more connected to energy. And I don't think that's something that you have to have in order to be spiritual, but I think that's a lot of the same experience for some people. So I just remember feeling like really, really connected and like very, I'm very sensitive, like to emotions and people's energy, and like, I don't know, it's just, it was always there. It was always like, I'm really sensitive. But I never really connected with it a lot when I was younger, because it wasn't a thing that was really talked about in my family. Like, they're very, wrapped up in the physical world. They're amazing and I love them, but they are in the physical world. And then when I started to get older, I would say it was probably when I started the nutrition school, because I started to pick up self-help books. I don't even know what led me to do that. Maybe I felt
your
lost.
intuition.
I have no idea. I probably, yeah, exactly. I just started picking them up. Like, no one told me, here, read this book. Like, I just did. And that started to open my mind, and then slowly became more comfortable with it. Like, it was sort of my own little personal thing for a while. Like, spirituality wasn't talked about as much back then. And now I feel like it's way more open, and I wouldn't care if it wasn't anyway, because I, like you, have experienced so many things that are just more amazing than you can even describe in words. But yeah, it definitely probably started then, where I really became connected to it.
So what was the first experience you had where it felt like transcendental, something that was unignorably spiritual?
Well, this would be recent, when I was in Bali. It was really crazy, because before I went to Bali, I thought that I was like really connected to myself, which I think I was, but I didn't realize how much more you could connect with, and like how much was really out there. So then in Bali, we were, without even knowing it, practicing meditations and yoga and asana practice that was leading to Kundalini energy, which they didn't tell us, because they didn't want us to expect anything. So I guess you could say that it was a Kundalini awakening, I guess. I don't know. But that's what I would describe it as. But so this would be in Bali, where we were meditating. We meditated about 3 times a day. For all of you listening, I did my 300-hour teacher training in Bali, Indonesia. So
is that you do a 200-hour to get started, and then you do an additional 300 hours?
Yeah, you can stop at 200. Like, a lot of people just stop at 200. But in your 200-hour, you're really mostly learning how to be a teacher. And then it's in like the 300 hours where you go deeper into the practice and more of the history of yoga and meditation and all of sort of the other little bits and pieces that are really, really extraordinary about yoga. So that's what you don't have to do that, but I wanted to do that. I knew that I wanted to learn more about yoga. And you can keep going from there too. You can add on another 300, another 500 with different programs and people.
So you mentioned you had that Kundalini rising experience.
Yes.
My understanding of Kundalini energy is that inside the body, sort of like interwoven between the physical and the astral body, you have the 7 chakra system.
Mm-hmm.
And the energy travels along your cerebral spinal fluid.
Yes.
As part of the physical body.
Yes.
And that as you raise your vibration from your lower energy centers, your root chakra, up through sacral, up,
Mm-hmm.
eventually, once it reaches your crown, that's when you have that sort of otherworldly experience, the merging of yourself with all that is.
Yes.
And there's a bunch of different ways you can have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
Kundalini yoga, I believe, is specifically designed to do that intentionally with breath work and certain postures and certain mudras, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, there's like Kundalini is, you said it exactly right. Like you're guiding this energy up through the body. But after I got back from Bali, I've been continuously reading about it too, through a bunch of different books and stuff. And what is said is that this energy is always available to each and every person, and it rests at the base of the spine, so below the 7 chakras, and it kind of lives there. But if you don't try to awaken it, this sort of extra energy that you have, then it will just stay dormant. It will never be awakened. So again, it's that sort of believing like you have to try to awaken it in order for it to become awakened. And then just like you said, you kind of guide it through the 7 chakras. But it takes a really long time. And every time it hits a new chakra, you have sort of like a mini Kundalini awakening. So each time you guide it up the body through breath work and meditation and asana, you have sort of like these mini Kundalini experiences. So for me personally, it hasn't gone all the way to the crown, because that would be enlightenment. So I felt it come up to the heart space, which was really cool, because I'm not really the type of person that overshares, or even though I am very sensitive inside, I don't really express that to people, because I got really comfortable at keeping it in, you know? So in Bali, through all of this, I literally had this experience where I felt like my heart cracked open, and it was a very cool experience. Like my head dropped back and you feel this rush of energy. But so for me, I believe that it is resting at the heart right now, and I would like to guide it further up. So hopefully that makes sense. But basically, yeah, you can have these mini experiences all the way up through the chakras until it reaches the crown.
So you honor me with this discussion then, because it sounds like this probably isn't the kind of thing you would have necessarily done even a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Being so open.
Yeah, no. Yeah. It's very cool. Like I just didn't realize how much you could tap into. And I didn't really have a steady meditation practice before I went to Bali. Like I dabbled with it, little bits in here, but I really didn't realize how amazing it is to simply just meditate each day for, 10, 20 minutes, whatever it is, or longer. And that can really change your life. So now I have, a meditation practice. I'm wondering if you do too. Do you as well?
I do. It's not as consistent as it used to be.
It's hard.
So I used to do sensory deprivation floats several times a week. And so I would get an hour of extremely deep meditation, at least twice a week. And that drove some truly transformative years of my life. I was able to get control of a lot. I was able to let go of a lot. I was able to heal a lot. Truth Organic Spa in town burned down. My heart continues to go out to Julie and all the folks there. That's the place that I was going. And so I think it was maybe November. Suddenly I lost that part of my practice. And I have been doing meditations, but not as consistently and certainly not as nearly at great lengths. It's closer to like 5 to 10, maybe 15 minutes. And I might be lying down on a bed of nails. That's one of my favorite ways to do it. I've got a AccuSpike mat. That's
Oh,
it's just so interesting, the different ways that you can get your body to let go. And you wouldn't
yeah.
think that stabbing yourself with hundreds of nails would be the answer to it. But by shocking your body with something, you can actually, that's not really a threat, because it's not enough to puncture you, but it's enough to
Hmm.
shock the body. And then once the body gets over the sensation of like, oh shit, right, the initial
Yeah.
shock, then it completely relaxes much more than before you had the experience at all. Anyway, and what's changed about my practice is, originally I was trying to do something.
Hmm.
You know, I was a big achiever for
Uh-huh.
most of
Yeah.
my life, right? And
Hmm.
so in meditation, I was like I must calm the mind. I must keep the thoughts out. I must do this. And if I wasn't doing it, then I was failing and I was getting frustrated. And now I just close my eyes and breathe.
Oh,
And
yeah.
whatever happens, it's like a movie. It's always just a
Yeah.
movie. That's the irony about life, right? Is we get
Yeah.
sucked into this matrix thinking that we're doing something. And it's like, it's all just passing before you like this multi-dimensional film. And we get
Yeah.
tricked into thinking it's something that's, you know, so much more consequential than that.
Yeah.
And that's what causes all the stress and the anxiety.
Exactly.
So now when I meditate, I just, you know, let the thoughts and emotions come. And oftentimes I'll go into a state that's sort of between sleeping and awake,
Hmm.
where I can still hear everything, but I'm not in this conscious space.
Hmm.
I don't really know how to describe it.
I think
I
that,
know there's been some
yeah.
research done on it recently. Andrew
Yeah.
Huberman's been talking about it on his podcast, I think.
Yeah, I've heard about, there's like 4 kind of layers to meditation.
Hmm.
I can't remember exactly, but there's a lot of yoga science that goes into, such as like the koshas and everything, which I won't go into because I don't feel comfortable enough to talk about it correctly. But I know that there's 4 dimensions that you can kind of hit throughout a meditation practice, just like you're saying, and you can kind of go further and further.
And you know, the one time I made it, quote unquote, all the way, or as far into it as I can conceive of going,
Uh-huh.
um, that was wild. That was absolutely wild.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is I didn't really chase that again, which is also atypical of me. Like normally I was a peak experience chaser, you
Mm-hmm.
know, whether it was driving fast cars or going on fancy vacations or buying nice things. It was always about like the best, the best, the best. And for some reason, after I experienced that, it was just like, oh, that's a thing.
Aw.
And then I wanted to understand all the stuff around it, but
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily like, I have to get back there and do it again and
Yeah.
again and again. And I think I probably did get close once or twice. I don't
Mhm.
actually even remember, to be honest with you. But it's almost like you don't even, once you know it exists, you don't need to necessarily experience it anymore.
Mhm.
Not to say that you shouldn't point in the direction that would eventually guide you there,
Yes.
because your life will just be better off for it. But it's more about cracking the shell. It's very much, the movie The Matrix, I look at
Yeah.
as like
Yeah, I
such a
just watched
perfect
that.
allegory for life,
It is.
because it's like, holy shit, it's really
Once you
what it's
see
like.
it.
You get
Yeah.
stripped out and you're
Yeah.
like, oh God,
Yeah, and then
I've
you
been
can
living
see
this like
clearly.
myth.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
how it
just
feels.
watched that recently. It's
For the
amazing.
first time?
Yeah, because in Bali, our teacher kept talking about it. He kept referring to it. He was like, the blue pill and the red pill. And we're like, and he's like, you have to watch The Matrix. So I just
And
watched
the
it. And
problem
like,
is you can't go back to sleep. That's the thing. It's
you
like
can't
once you know,
go back. Yeah.
and it's funny because I don't know about you, like where you've been on your spiritual journey, but like there's this like new tripwire every 3 months. something new to get like stumble on. And it's just like, you think you've got something figured out. And then all of a sudden you're in like the dark night of the soul,
I
or,
know, but I
you're
almost like,
bathing in nihilism.
yeah. I like love the dark moments now though. Like I feel like a little while ago, most people get quite afraid, I guess, of the darker moments in your life. And now when they come up, I love them because I'm like, that there's like a turning point. That it something is changing, something is shifting. So I love the darker moments now.
I think a lot of it is about perspective. So my grandfather passed away maybe a month ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And thank you. And he was a very significant figure in my life. We spent every week, we were there as kids. And when I went to go see him, his body at the hospital, he died in the same hospital, in the same wing, on the same floor as my dad did. Whoa. Which was a fascinating experience to be walking back in there, sort of retreading old ground. And my relationship with the situation couldn't have been any more different in terms of like, resistance versus acceptance. And I was just so grateful for the work that I've been able to do, so that going in there, I was able to just feel everything and just cry passionately and, laugh and smile and, really gaze upon him without shunning or, needing to look away, being afraid of what I might see or how I might feel. And I just felt like I had a really complete experience. Amazing. And to me, that's what coming to grips with the darker sides of life can do for you, is you accept that we're on this wave. You cannot just have peaks. Yeah. If you have peaks, all the time that you're like in between, you're fearing the valleys and you're creating your own hell. Yeah. Yeah. Because guess what? The valleys are coming. Yeah. There's nothing you're going to do about it. You're going to crash a car. Someone's going to die, right? Like shit just fucking happens. Yeah, you might as well embrace it. And you might as well embrace it. And I think it was Michael Singer, the guy who wrote The Untethered Soul, which was the book that really kicked me like off the cliff down this path.
Wow. That's a great book. Amazing.
He does a bunch of lectures, which I can't recommend enough. It's a 3-part series on Audible, if anybody cares to listen to it. I will. He makes a comparison. He's like, we don't realize that we are living in the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden is not some mythical place you go when you die. We're in it, because the most likely scenario is that this entire situation is created by an all-powerful, all-knowing entity that we call a god for the sake of experience. Because if you are everything, know everything, can do everything, then there's no surprise. There's no inquiry. There's nothing to experience. And so like we fall asleep on purpose coming in here such that we can experience things. Yeah. So every single thing in front of you, whether it's the car that's going too slow or the ill pet, and I'm sorry again about your cat.
That's okay. Thank you.
Everything is a blessing compared to the cold, dark void of space. Yeah. If you really think about it, if you point in any direction, leave this planet and start traveling, way before you die, you'll have hit nothing. And then 100 lifetimes, you'll have hit nothing. And you keep going, you'll have hit nothing. Most of the universe is absolutely fucking nothing. And we have tricked ourselves into thinking that only when we're getting exactly what we want, and it's more than everybody else around us, that we can feel happy. And that's, again, it's the way of which we like self-flagellate and contain ourselves in our own prison, when you can just let go and appreciate, like, yeah, you know what? it's dark and it's hard and it hurts, but it's also beautiful. It's beautiful how much I cared for my grandfather. It's beautiful how much you cared for your cat, right? It's a
Exactly.
gorgeous thing that love can even exist.
Exactly. Exactly. Again, it's perspective, just like you said. Like when you look at it like that, it's an experience. Like feel it all, be present with it all, because you sort of have this chance to do so. So I completely agree. Yeah.
So one of the things that you had mentioned is that your heart chakra was the one that you got to burst open in Bali.
Yeah.
What do you think, or have you considered what sealed that off to begin with? Was
Oh my
it
God.
like
Very interesting. Uh,
childhood trauma? Was it all the moves, going and having to meet new people as you were a teenager? Because those are
no.
obviously challenging formative years.
I guess I usually pin it all back to I have an amazing family. I'm very lucky. They're amazing, and so I'm so lucky to have them. But I guess I would say that most of the things that I would consider a problem, I guess, in my life. Sorry, my cat is coming over here. Um, she wants to be in it. But everything that have sort of created a lot of challenges in my life come from being younger. I was bullied, disliked a lot in middle school. So when I moved to Maine and I was put in a new
Middle school
school,
sucks.
what is awful, yeah. Yeah, it's awful. It's terrible. But it
Just
scarred
terrible.
me. It scarred me for life. Like from that moment, I felt like I wasn't enough. I would never be liked. I wasn't pretty enough, cool enough. Like I just never felt enough. Like my worth got kicked down.
Mm.
And I felt that way for a really long time. So again, when you feel like you're not enough, you hold everything in because you're afraid to show the world who you are. So I think I just closed my heart for a really long time. And
Do you think you realized that was happening
when?
when you were, let's say, in high school? Did you think you realized that you had been affected by those middle school years and that you were
No,
behaving in a different way because of it?
no, I really didn't. And I think that's so crazy that it took me a really long time. Like, I think this was recently. It was probably when I was healing from having an eating disorder that I realized like you kind of can trace your trauma. And I always thought, I had an amazing childhood. Like I don't have trauma. And then I was like, wait, but like you pinpoint the moments that if you think about it hard enough and go through your life, you can find the moments that really did scar
Mm-hmm.
you. So this was just recently or a couple years ago, I was like, wow, that moment scarred me. But then you can work through it, which is really cool. So yeah, I guess I closed off my heart for a really long time and just recently started to let it open. So that it was such a profound experience in Bali because I'd never felt that before. I'd never felt that much love for myself from the universe, I guess, an unknown source. I have no idea. But I immediately went and got a tattoo. Like that's how profound it was. I got a tattoo of my heart chakra on my sternum the very next day.
Amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It's crazy.
So for folks who don't have the budget, the wherewithal, let's say they're not at a place where they believe enough in all of this stuff that we're talking about to take that kind of a leap. How would you recommend somebody get started when, because people could be watching this anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And wherever they walk in, they might walk into somebody who all they give a shit about is the asanas. And they're just, helping you get a good workout. How would you recommend folks start to explore and understand more about the complete picture of yoga and what it really is?
That's there's that's hard. If you are really looking for that. I think taking slow classes is a great way to feel the benefits of relaxing and breathing. I mean, when you have the time to slow down, which a lot of people don't like to do, they avoid slowing down. They think slow yoga, it's not going to give me anything, which I thought the same thing too. But when you just go do it, just go do it. This is my recommendation. Go take a slow flow yoga class and just fully experience it. You notice what's happening with the breath. And it may be uncomfortable because a lot of people don't slow down. They're not used to that. But just going to do that, sort of having some space to be present with yourself, with your body, just you become more aware and a little bit more connected. And I think the more you do that, the more you sort of slow down. I guess it doesn't even have to be in a yoga practice. That can really help you connect with what yoga is really all about. It's connecting back with yourself, with the world around you, with energy, with sort of the subtler aspects of the world rather than the physical world. So I think, yeah, slowing down is a huge part of it. Yeah.
Have you ever done any cold exposure?
Not really. When I was in Bali, again, they had the what do you call it? Like the cycles where you do like the hot tub and then the cold. We did that in Bali, and that was amazing. But I only did it one time, so I don't have much experience with it. I wish there was something around here. Maybe you know of something around here.
There is. There's a place in Rhode Island.
Amazing.
I'll have to get the name of it.
Yes.
My wife booked us something next month. We're going away for a weekend, and we're going to do it. It's like a water therapy thing where there's all these different stations, and you go from
amazing
place to place to place. My friend Shauna got me into cold exposure, and she got into it, I believe, through Wim Hof. Have you heard of him?
Sounds familiar, but
so Wim Hof is from Norway, Iceland. I don't know. He's from somewhere that's cold.
Okay.
And he's a yogi, and he excuse me, he's got a really tragic story. I think he lost his wife and his kids, and he was like really on the brink, and somehow stumbled into cold exposure therapy and realized that by using it in the same way that like relaxing enough can let the energy out, slowing the vibration of your cells down enough can let the energy out.
Wow.
And so it's really fascinating. Like if you sit in an ice tub for 10 minutes and really like do the deep breathing, you'll find yourself just bawling uncontrollably, no idea why. And it's not because you're cold, it's because stuff is just pouring out. Yeah. Wow. I witnessed it happen to my friends before. So he's gone so far down the path that he can control his immune system. So they've done studies where he'll go into a lab and they'll inject him with pathogens that are known to create like an immune response. And through deep meditation, he can shut off the immune response. What? He can sit in water that should give you hypothermia in like minutes, and he'll sit there for an hour submerged to his chin in ice, basically.
He's practiced this so much that he's gotten used to it?
Because it's not just that he's gotten used to it. It's that he has done the yoga to overtake his mind and the control systems in his body.
Wow.
And a lot of that is possible because this cold exposure therapy allowed him to heal all the trauma out of his body.
Wow.
So I don't know if you've ever seen it. There's a Rage Against the Machine music album cover with a monk sitting in lotus pose on fire. Have you ever seen this? It's a very famous image.
Of course I haven't seen it.
It's well, you're a little young to have been into Rage Against the Machine in the 90s, but
Yeah, I can't even think
It's
of
a
the video.
very famous image, and he was protesting um, sort of anti-Buddhist happenings in that part of the world.
Okay.
And this guy sat down in lotus posture, had gasoline poured over him, lit himself on fire, and burned to death in lotus posture. And what that proves to me is that there is literally nothing that you can't overcome with the right amount of training and focus. Like people talk about, oh, my animal instincts, I couldn't not cheat, or I couldn't
Yeah.
not steal that thing, or I couldn't not whatever. It's
Mhm.
bullshit.
Yeah.
You just you have not healed enough of the stuff
Yes.
that kept all your energy in those lower chakras
Yes.
focused on those animalistic instincts,
Yes.
right? That you weren't able to use the energies up here to
Mhm.
control all of this.
Yes.
I no longer remember why I started down that tirade.
I don't know either, but I like where it went. You're so true, though. It's like you have to let go. You have to start the process of letting go. And the more you let go, the more, again, I guess the energy would move up the body and you can use your instincts and your intuition and your heart. You're so right. And most people, unfortunately, are stuck in the lower chakras. And
How has your life changed since coming back from Bali?
I'm so much more relaxed. It's crazy. Like my life is not that different. Like my actual life, like from someone else's point of view, I still have the same jobs, but I am so much more relaxed.
Your
And
lived experience is more peaceful.
yes, exactly. Like things just kind of pass through me and I just let them go. And not all the time, obviously. Like there are things that annoy me and I get mad about, but it's it's really crazy. Like it's just a little bit easier. So like the more you practice this, I think that's why like there's this depiction, I guess, of spiritual people being really happy because you, like you said, you've let go of stuff and you continue to let go and you stop letting it affect you and life really is a little bit lighter and you have more happiness. I mean, it's a practice. You have to continuously work on these things, but the effects are real. So yeah, it just like my life may look exactly the same, but it feels a whole lot different. And
I like the way you said it looks the same, but it feels different.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that's exactly how I would describe it. And I don't know what I was going to say, but of course, like there's challenges too. But like I said, you sort of show yourself, I guess, the strength that you have through facing all the stuff that's on the inside. So through yoga, you obviously have to face some really dark stuff, insecurities, things that trauma, things you've been holding on to. Through that, you find a lot of strength to, again, like you said, embrace the challenges that are coming next in life, the valleys of life. And you embrace them. So you learn how to embrace challenge, which is one of my favorite parts about yoga. But yeah.
Have you ever done any traditional therapy?
What?
Have you ever done any traditional therapy, like talk therapy?
A little. I did just when I had an eating disorder, I had a therapist. And one of them I hated. He was awful. I don't know if I can swear, but he was an asshole. He was an asshole. He was a douchebag. But then I had another therapist, and he was really helpful. Why do you ask?
Well, I've been in therapy in some form or fashion for probably 30 years. I had a very traumatic childhood, very abusive household. And so my mom put me in therapy early. We went to family therapy for a little while. And then I was in couples counseling for like 10 years. And now I'm in individual therapy currently. And I think it's interesting the different modalities there are for healing. And, you know, mostly I look at traditional therapy less at helping to heal and more at helping to triage. So what I didn't see, what I was not able to see myself, was how much damage I was doing to myself by acting out my trigger responses. And so therapy helped me understand more about like, oh, that's not a sensible response to that stimulus. Like there's something else there. Where does that come from?
Yeah.
Right. And it helped me like pause and consider like, where is this generating from? And then it gave me the tools to, if I could give myself a second, or how to buy myself a second, right? If I felt out of control, like I got to leave the room, I got to hang up the phone, I got to, it's way better to hang up or walk out of the room than it is to do or say something that you can't take back.
Yeah.
Right. And so it starts to give you these components that can help you start to create more space in your life so that you could get to psychological safety. Because if you grew up really traumatized, and not to put everything on a scale, but like sometimes it's bad enough that like you never feel safe.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to heal in that state, because if you can't be still enough to ever open your heart, to ever be vulnerable, to ever be empathetic to another person, like it's extremely difficult to make any kind of progress.
Yes.
So I was just curious if there was any component of that with you, just for folks who are listening who maybe have not tried therapy yet but are curious about it.
I love what you said.
I too have had. Thank you. I too have had shitty therapists, and I think that for people who are, like really on the fence, and it takes everything in you to find a therapist and to make that call and to show up for that first appointment. It's a journey. Do not look at it as an event and that like this is the person and that all therapists are the same. Put yourself in the mindset, if you can, that like I'm on a healing journey and I'm going to ride the wave and I will heal in some form or fashion as I go. And it might take me 1, 2, 3 therapists before I find somebody who's suited for me.
Yes.
Because I remember there was this one woman where I was just like, bitch, you said what? Like she was super inflammatory. She was like degrading my father in front of me who had just passed away. And I was just like, I don't even understand what's happening here.
Oh my God. Awful.
So you've got to find, and I'm the person that I'm actually seeing a couple of people right now. The people I'm seeing now are just perfect for me, but it's like the first, one of them is a gentleman. He's more of a traditional guy. And I was on a waiting list for like 5 months.
Wow.
Not because I knew he was like the guy. I just reached out to somebody local, put myself on a list, and, it just happened to work out. And in the interim of that, I tried ZocDoc, and I just found some random woman who, I think it was after the 3rd or 4th session, she said, I don't know where to go from here. Like I had stumped her in terms of like the situations I was dealing with. Cause a lot of the stuff that, I had been working on was, very spiritual and complicated in terms of like fear of death and nihilism and all this stuff. And she was, I think more used to dealing with people who were at the very beginning of their journey.
Okay. Yeah.
So anyway, so don't be afraid to try and find somebody who works.
I agree with that. Yeah, it's definitely a journey.
So going back to your current journey, what do you see as like what you work on now? What is actively part of your practice these days?
See, for yoga, well, I consistently practice asana at the studio, which I would say is mainly just asana, not just asana, but it's mainly asana practice, obviously with connection to breath. And that's amazing. I always will love that. But at home, what I'm actively working on is keeping a solid meditation practice. Like we were talking about, it can be really hard to keep meditating, like actually sitting down and meditating. And when I first got back from Bali, I was really like nervous that I was going to lose it. And I was a little hard on myself. I was like, you have to meditate every single day. But I've kind of found this balance now where if I can't, I can't, and it's fine. So it's really cool to find that. And I just kind of do it when I can, and I crave it now. So it kind of just works out where I fit it in. And then I don't know. What else I'm working on? I'm in a funny place, I guess. Like I don't really know what's next, which is weird. It's kind of like a little scary. Like, I don't know what I'm doing next. Like, I have a bunch of ideas of where I want to go as a yoga teacher and in my career. So I'm really working on kind of figuring that out. Like, I'm not being so hard on myself about it, like I need to figure it out now, but I'm kind of just like in this process of like figuring out what's next, which is a cool place to be as well. But just, I think for me, like, I sound so basic when I say, oh, meditation saved my life, because so many people say that. I mean, it's really amazing. And I never thought that I would be the kind of person that just sat down and meditated every day. But it really is like, if I can't get to the studio or I can't have a full practice of yoga, like 10 minutes to just sit by yourself in quiet, closing the eyes so you're away from the external physical world, it's really powerful to just kind of feel energy and connect with yourself, and then connect with the energy around you.
When you first started, did you find it difficult to not freak out?
Oh my God, that's so fun. I always forget about that it's scary to sit in quiet. Yeah, I couldn't really meditate for that long a while ago when I first started, and it needed to be a guided meditation. Like, it had to be like a voiceover or a podcast or whatever. So yeah, I remember it being scary to sit alone with your thoughts, and I wouldn't last very long. It would be maybe 5 minutes and I would be done. But just continuously showing up, sort of embracing the challenge, doing it anyway, it gets better. Like you said, you have to kind of clear everything out. There's a lot of stuff there that you can't see. And if you can just start with a couple minutes by yourself, sit with your eyes closed and see what happens. And just sit with it. And it gets better. It gets easier for sure. So yeah, that's what I think I want to focus on that a lot more too, as I've been teaching a little more meditation, because I want to show people now, before it was all yoga, and now I really want to show people how powerful meditation is. So
I love that. How has your family and friends responded to this newer version of you, and/or how have you dealt with the almost certain urge to like grab people by the collars and say, oh my God, stop torturing yourself?
Oh my God, right? Isn't that how it is? You want to be like, wake up. Let's see. The second part of your question, I can't remember what you said first. But
the first part is, how have your family and friends been reacting to this newer version of you, this more peaceful version of you, this more heart open version of you?
Let's see. To that, I would say maybe it makes some people uncomfortable, but I don't care. So I just keep moving forward anyway. So as for my family, I think they've just adjusted to it. Kind of just, it's not like they don't accept me for who I am, or they don't accept this part of me. They're just not into it. But I think we've came to a really good place where they're like, okay, this is Krystal. She's spiritual, whatever. And there's just kind of like this understanding, and I don't care. So I just am who I am anyway. For friends, that'd be a little bit different, because I went through a lot of solitude when I was healing and going through an eating disorder, and I had just moved. I didn't create a lot of friendships for a long time. I didn't really have friends. I have friends from like childhood and stuff. Yes, but like I didn't create new friendships for a while. So all of the friends that I have created have come more recently in my life and kind of fit my life. Like it just works. We're understanding of the same things. So that was never really like a big thing. But yeah, I just feel like
Do you think you've mourned that period of your life yet where you were so lonely?
Yes. Yes. I think it comes and goes, but I definitely was like, that's a cool question. Because it is like a mourning. It's like you have to leave this part of yourself.
When you realize the things that you could have had, right? There's a part of you that has to sort of like process that.
Yes.
Because at least for me, like, you know, let's say there was a period of time where I was estranged from somebody, whether it was friends or family, or I was acting like a dick, or I was ignoring somebody because they had been acting like a dick or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's all that is lost in what could have been. It almost like that's what's being mourned, is the possibility that never could have come to fruition because of just the reality of life, right?
Yeah.
That you were going through something and it is what it is.
Yeah,
but it can still be heartbreaking.
That. Yeah. Yeah, you do. There's this weird part where you kind of realize like, oh, like, I don't know, I almost didn't realize for a while that I wasn't making friends and that I was alone. And then at one point there was this point where I was like, oh, but I had this understanding. I was like, I was going through a lot. So I didn't have space for all of that. And there was probably a lot of emotions around that time where I felt really mad at myself for a little bit and then blah, blah, blah. It's like back and forth. But I've mostly come to a lot of understanding that there wasn't space for that in my life. And I think that's really important as well. Yeah, to like have sort of time to, you know, understand yourself and have kindness for yourself for what you went through. Being your own
like that is
friend.
It's hard to quantify the percentage, but I feel like that's half the damn battle, is giving yourself the grace to be who you are.
Yeah.
You know, like I was just a hurt kid doing my best.
Yeah.
I still am.
Yeah.
And every day I get up and I do something that's less than perfect. And I can self-flagellate about that and beat myself up and, you know, get down on myself and whatever. And all that will come of that is more negative.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like you have to look at yourself with the loving eyes of a mother, of the mother, right? Of Gaia, and just see like you just are this blossoming flower that's going through shit and doing your best every day. And as long as you're pointed towards better, it's great.
Yeah. And then, you can also...
What else could you ask?
Everyone's going through it, you know? And it's like a collective, you know? Everyone's experiencing hard.
And that's the thing, is I feel like once you forgive yourself and you give yourself some grace, it almost blasts open the door to having empathy for other people.
Yes.
Because you realize like, oh, everybody's going through shit. Yeah. Everybody had a fucked up childhood in one way or another. Because the worst thing that ever happened to you is the worst thing that ever happened to you.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Whether it means you grew up in Auschwitz or you grew up in a, you know, waspy, tight ass family with all this money, but expectations and control and domination, right? Like everybody went through something that terrorized them, that created challenges that they are eventually going to have to overcome as adults.
Yes. But it's like, I truly believe that those challenges were given to you to help you for a reason. I mean, that's easier to say probably in my position because I didn't go through something extremely traumatizing, but there can be a lot on the journey of healing through those things.
In this lifetime, by the way.
Yes.
You didn't.
That is true. In this lifetime. Who knows about the past? But yeah, but I think it's part of the journey to go through those things. They're there to teach you things and to show you things and to help you along the way. So realizing
Do you ever hear of the Stoic philosophy, the obstacle is the way?
No.
There's a gentleman, I think his name is Ryan Holiday. good friend of Tim Ferriss. If you know him, he's got a very popular podcast, wrote the 4 Hour Work Week.
Yeah.
And he studied a lot of the ancient philosophers and Stoics, Greeks. So people who lived thousands of years ago, but have like enduring wisdom. And one of their premises is the obstacle is the way, which means that the things that get put in your path, if you look at them more objectively, meaning less with the emotion of this is unfair and I'm pissed about it, it can become the thing that helps you grow. It can become the thing that rises above and transforms you into that next layer. So like you were saying, you get excited when the darkness comes because you know that there's something transformational around the corner. That's sort of the key theme behind it, is that embrace the suck. Yeah. You know that life is ups and downs, and just ride the wave. Figure out what's on the other side, because it's probably going to be cool.
That was another big thing that I learned recently just through my time in Bali was emotions. So many people go through their life through the lens of their emotions. Their emotions control what they do and how they feel, but being able to look at your emotions objectively is a game changer. If you can just notice them, see them, but don't let it affect your choices and your moves and your decisions, you can kind of just let the emotions be there. Obviously feel them, but don't let it control you, is a game changer.
That's what I got from Michael Singer's book, The Untethered Soul.
Yes.
So for anybody who hasn't read it or isn't familiar with the concept, he poses a question very early on in the book, which is, who are you? And most of us grow up thinking that we are this body, we are our minds, and we are our emotions. When in fact, it would appear through all available evidence and all the research I've done and thousands of years of spiritual and religious text, that is not the case. We are the witness to all those things. We are the witness to the mind, the witness to the emotions, and the witness to the inputs from the body. And so being in the seat of self means that you are detached enough, you've sat back enough in your consciousness that when an emotion flares up, it doesn't flare up in you. It flares up in front of you.
Exactly.
And you're like, aha, I see that I'm pissed about this. I wonder why. Where does that come from? And you get this ability to look at it very objectively. And it's like, thanks for the feedback. I want, what do I want to do with that? Is it something that is like a real proper threat to my immediate self? Is there actually something that need be engaged? And in fact, almost absolutely never would that come from an emotional space. In fact, I'm even willing to say that it literally would never come from an emotional space, because gut instincts, I think, are like the ticker tape to the universe. It's like, that's where your intuition comes from. That's where flow state comes from. That's where the Akashic records get like read through your body all day, every day. And it tells you the perfect next thing to do. So when there's a true and proper threat to your existence, it's coming from the gut. It's not coming from the heart and from these inflamed emotions.
Agreed.
So if you're feeling that vibration, if you're feeling that those reactions, whether it's jealousy or rage or anger or guilt or shame, you can basically rest assured 100% chance that is a stored emotion, some kind of old trauma response that's getting vibrated out and causing you to have this response. And if you look at it that way, it can become a curiosity. It can become a like, what the fuck is that about?
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of throwing up whatever that energy is on the person in front of you who happened to pop that bubble, which is how 99.9% of people walk around, right? You see people in the grocery store, driving down the street. It's sad. It's sad to see, because it used to make me angry. And now it bums me out, because it's like, oh man, those people are in so much pain. Yeah. Because hurt people hurt people.
So lost. Yeah, exactly. And Same way. I feel bad. Again, you want to just shake them, like wake up. But they're on their own journey too, so they'll find their way.
That's exactly right.
Or when they're meant to.
And isn't that a mind fuck? So that's a really good example of one of the tripwires that's built into this spiritual path. Is you get this kernel of wisdom, and suddenly you want to bring it to the world.
Yeah.
But you can't.
You can't.
Because it's like if you go out to your garden in the spring and you take that little, blossom and rip it open, you destroy it.
Yeah.
You cannot force a flower to bloom.
Exactly.
It doesn't work like that.
Oh, that's such a good analogy. I love that.
You have to bring it water, let the sun shine, brush away the pests, right?
Yeah, it happens.
Prune it maybe. But it's so hard because I've got several folks in my family, immediate and extended, that are in a lot of pain, spiritually, emotionally, and actually some physically, because all the spiritual and emotional pain has gotten to the point where it's becoming somatic. Yeah. It's causing things like fibromyalgia and other autoimmune disorders because there's so much like deep and significant trauma.
Yeah. Oh, sad.
And old me would want to like somehow force them into some type of a healing process, shame them into some type of a healing process, like beat them over the head with, you must do this, you must think this, you must whatever. And now I look at it and it's like, I open my heart to them. I might send them some books. I might make a recommendation here or there. I might say, hey, if you want to have like a talk, I'm happy to come over and sit down for a chat. If you want to come here, whatever. Like, so that they know that they're loved and that there's space for them. But then like, it's their journey.
Exactly.
And man, is that hard.
Kindness, but it's their journey. Yeah. And that's hard. Yeah. It's so hard. But
how did you get over that so fast? You're really young to have already gotten over that.
I don't know. No idea. I don't know. I really don't know.
That could just be part of the old soul stuff.
I think it is. I don't know. I just see it that way. So, but
what did you think when I first said that to you, by the way? This guy's fucking nuts.
I get it a lot, actually. I'm not gonna lie.
Wow.
I get it a lot, which, I don't really tell a lot of people that because that can.
You don't want to sound like you're bragging.
Like, yeah. Oh, I'm an old soul. So I don't really say that a lot, but I do get it a lot. So I'm like, okay.
Do you believe in reincarnation and all that?
I do. I think I really do. I think it makes the most sense, but I could be wrong. So I don't know. I don't know for sure. I'm not set on something, but I read a book. The name is slipping my mind. I can't remember. I'll have to let you know if I remember, but it's a book. It's a very small book about, I think he was a psychotherapist. And he was just like a traditional therapist. I might be saying the names wrong, but he was a traditional therapist that was not spiritual at all. And then he talks about this one patient that he had, and he used hypnosis to help heal his patients, and she started communicating from her past lives. And the way he writes about it in the book is really cool because he never believed in reincarnation, and it completely changed him. And he suddenly did. And anyway, the book is really cool, and it describes reincarnation basically and how you find the same people over and over again. So that book made a lot of sense to me, and I like to think it's true, but again, I could be wrong. I don't know. What do you think?
I heard a very interesting theory from somebody who's done ayahuasca many times. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've done any psychedelics or anything.
No, I have not.
That our DNA is actually an encoding of everything that's ever happened since the beginning of the universe.
Wow.
And
really
what
cool.
happens when you do ayahuasca is your consciousness goes from this, because if you think about it, from the scale of the universe, we are exactly equidistant between Planck's constant, which is the smallest measurement of something,
Mm-hmm.
and the scale of the observable universe. So it's something like 10 to the negative 34th or 40th, I can't remember the number, is Planck's constant, and then the scale of the universe is 10 to the 34th or 10 to the 40th.
Okay.
So our, like, where we exist is right in the middle. And so the concept is that when you're on ayahuasca, it takes you down to a smaller, like, compression of consciousness. Like you're going to a smaller, like, you're still in the same dimensions, but you're going to a like a higher or lower vibration. I'm not sure how to describe it exactly, but that basically you're going into the DNA. And so all the spirits that you see and interact with and all the past and future lives and all these things is actually you taking like a journey through your own DNA that tells a story of everything that's happened since the universe began.
Wow.
Which is pretty fucking crazy to consider.
Yeah. That sounds like a lot like
and I haven't done it myself yet.
Wow.
But I do think there's certainly something there. And there's a reason why the Icaros of South America, the people who hold these shamanistic ceremonies with people with ayahuasca and other plant medicine, the way in which they're able to heal old stuff, it seems very possible that they're not just healing this lifetime trauma. Because one of the things we know scientifically now is that if a mom has trauma while pregnant, that epigenetically is coded in the baby's DNA.
Wow.
So the baby will come out, like, let's say a mom is starved during pregnancy. That gets coded in the child in terms of how they think about and treat food. If the mom is physically attacked in some way and feels unsafe, that gets encoded on the children. So if you imagine that however many times backward, like, we're all like data storage machines passing it down one generation to the next.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to think that like there's not millennia-old trauma stored literally at the cellular level.
Yeah. Wow.
And if you think, how many yogis are there in the world? How many spiritual people are there in the world? And then how many Christs and Buddhas have there been? Not that many. And I think it's because there's so much to heal. It's beyond just like this, whatever we've gone through here, but there could be these other echelons that you don't even know or understand.
Yes.
And so that kind of stuff I find fascinating to consider.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, it's like, that's what makes me believe in it more too, is that like each lifetime you're sort of like healing yourself a little bit more, and you're meant to have the challenges to help heal yourself a little bit more, that eventually you probably make it up to the place that, I guess, to enlightenment, or to a place where like you consider a Buddha to be. Like, that makes sense. Like, each lifetime you learn more, and you so some people aren't ready again.
And maybe sometimes you go backwards.
Yes, I agree with that too. Yeah, sometimes you go backwards, but you're given the challenges to help you grow forward. But yeah, sometimes they take you backwards. I totally agree with that. It's so interesting. It's crazy. But
you ever get freaked out thinking about it?
Yeah. Not in like a I'm scared way, but it's just wild, right? It's just wild that it could be like that. And I don't know. I'm just like, I'm so curious when my cat died was the first real experience I've ever had with death. Like, I've been very lucky enough that all my main people in my life are still here. She was my best friend. So when she died, I got wicked curious. I was like, where do they go? Where is she now?
Mm.
Like, I don't understand how you can be here 1 second and be gone the next second. Right. So I started really thinking about it a lot more. And so I don't know, it's crazy, but that has been on my mind a lot. It's just like, what happens? I don't know. It's very interesting. I'm sure a lot of people feel that way too.
I'll tell you, I spent the better part of 40 years never really thinking about it.
Well, really?
Even though my dad died when I was 28, it was just like, that was just trauma to be buried and hustled past.
Yeah.
I never really spent that much time considering, like, what are we doing here? And like, what happens after?
I feel like I think about that every day.
Well, I do now.
Yeah,
literally.
You do now. Yeah.
Whereas,
but you're
and
right,
that's part of the Matrix stuff, right? Is like, before you come out of it, it's about like fast cars and food and sex and money and all this stuff, and it's just like, and then all of a sudden you get hit by a bus and you're like, whoa, wait a second, none of that matters at all. Yeah.
Your thoughts are,
how do I get this Kundalini rising? Like,
yeah, it's crazy. You're right, though. I guess a lot of people may not even be thinking about it, but I do.
So if you could take someone who is struggling and give them a message of hope, what would that sound like? Because obviously you had a point in your life where you weren't sure of where you were going to head. Actually, let me ask you that question differently. If you could go back to the Krystal who had an eating disorder and who felt unlovable and who was lonely and, you know, didn't know that it was going to be okay, what would you say to her? What would your advice be?
I'd probably... That's hard. How would I put this into words? Because it's been so much experience. I guess I would say to love yourself. Like, I would say, you know, it starts with yourself. So forget about everyone else and focus on your relationship with yourself. You know, what can you do in this moment to practice loving yourself? And that's a hard question. I guess what would I tell her? I would tell her to just trust her inner instinct, because I know deep down, I can remember that, you know, you have this instinct that, like, where you're meant to go, and just follow that sort of gut instinct and your intuition, and just follow it where it goes, and it will lead you in the right direction. And just keep your eye down that road, you know, try to not let other people and other things throw you off the path. Just keep moving forward from your intuition and your gut feeling. But I think a lot of it does start with self-love as well. I think loving yourself and creating a connection with yourself is the beginning to a lot of happiness and love and joy and all of those good things that come in life. So love yourself.
What does self-love mean to you?
What does self-love mean to me? It means accepting yourself as a whole. It means embracing each and every part of yourself, the quote unquote bad and good. It means being there for yourself, and it means trusting yourself, and again, your instinct. You know, it's hard to put that into words, what self-love means. It really is. It's a
you just
hard
did a
one.
good job.
But that's the best I can come up with it. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. Self-love is beautiful.
Well, you're a beautiful woman, inside
you.
and out, and I appreciate you deeply.
Me too. This is really interesting conversation, and we're on the same wavelength. So it's cool. It's cool to talk to people who get it.
I knew you were on the wavelength before you were even on the wavelength. I think that's actually quite interesting.
That's amazing. That's
right,
really
because
cool.
you hadn't been to Bali yet, and I still
know.
knew. I was like, oh, she gets it.
Yeah, and it's only gonna get cooler. Like, I can't wait to see. It's so cool to like. I can't wait to see myself in 10 years. Like, right? Like, how cool is that to like not be afraid of who you are in 10 years, but like, can't wait to see all of the growth. Like, I'll be guru by then. But it's exciting.
I'll say this: be prepared for the tripwires, because they're coming, and you won't see them coming, and they'll be weird, and all of a sudden it'll be like, why am I face down in the mud? I was just like soaring up to the heavens, because I spent from June to October of last year in a deep depression with like crippling anxiety. And that was coming off the back of like 2 years of like soaring, just like elevating all the time. And I'm not suggesting that like that level of thing is going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's hard when you're just chugging along and like things are just getting better, and you're feeling more peaceful, and it's getting easier, and you're attracting and manifesting things in your life. It makes it that much more devastating when something goes sideways, because it's like, wait a second, I had control of this.
Yeah. Wait, it was going so well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is not to say that in 10 years' time you're not going to be an unbelievable spiritual guide to those on this plane, because I'm quite confident that you will be.
Thank you.
Nice. That's just me. I don't know.
It's the truth.
Doing my best doing my best to let you know that it can't all be sunshine and rainbows, unfortunately.
I promise you, I know. But I thank you for the reminder. But I know that is one thing that I've also, come to learn through yoga, is that there is challenges. But again, like I said, love the challenges. So hopefully if I'm ever in a dark place, I can come back to this podcast and listen to my words that I said I love the challenges. And right there, I'll be like, okay, embrace it. And it'll be
what a fun idea. I had actually never even considered that as a use of this for
right, for my
self-reflection on yeah. I like that. Well, I would certainly love to have you on again in the future as you continue down this journey, as we're both like intertwining this path, right? Exploring different sides of it. But I think
it's really cool.
I have a lot to learn from you, and
as do I.
And it's just an honor to be in your sphere.
Thank you, man.
And thanks for kicking my ass every week.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming back again and again. And thank you so much for having me on. This is so nice. Like I said, I love talking to like-minded people, and then also I love the fact that you're opening this up to everyone else who's interested in it and may feel like they want to step into a more spiritual world, or maybe they don't, and maybe this will trigger something that they will. So I think it's really important to share this with the world as well. So thank you for giving me a chance to share my part. And I love that you're doing this.
You bet. And I'll give you all the links, and I'll make some clips and stuff for you to share.
Yes.
So that for the spiritually curious out there, I think that conversations like this that don't go too far off the deep end can be an interesting way to kind of, dip your toe in the water and start to understand what some of it means. Because I think, a lot of the stuff you come across on TikTok and Instagram can be so over the top, into the occult or alchemy or whatever. And I'm not saying those things aren't real and powerful, but like, if you don't believe in those things, right, it's like, and people aren't starting off believing in the force. No. They're starting off believing in the physical realm, and so they need some time to acclimate.
Yeah, and that's okay.
So thank you for helping folks acclimate.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's where it all starts, and it just gets better. Right. Well, with ups and downs, but better.
That's right. It just because it's up and to the right.
Exactly.
It's wavy.
Yeah, it's just a little wavy, but it's going up, even if
A
you
little
can't
bumpy.
see it.
That's right.
Exactly.
Exactly. Well, my friend, thank you again. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I will look forward to seeing you at the studio.
Thank you, Matthew. I
You
am
bet.
honored to have been here. So thank you so much.